Welcome to Minerva Meets. I'm your host, Sonal Chandler, and this is episode 23. Today, we're talking about the future of business transformation with AI. And the reason I wanted to bring this up today is because I'm seeing that organizations are constantly under pressure to evolve, right? With whether it's new technology or if it's shifting customer expectations, there's always something that's challenging organizations to evolve and do better. And as AI is becoming more and more popular, I'm seeing that this is yet another transformation that organizations have to go through. And as I'm on my journey with my clients, one of the big questions that I always hear is, where does AI make sense in my organization? How do I get started? And today, what I really wanted to do is bring on some friends to help me explore this a little bit further. I'm joined today by Zach Pascoe and Loren Alston of W Capra, which is a firm that helps organizations transform through technology, data, payments, security, and customer experience. So we're going to dig into this today. Welcome to the show, Zach and Loren. And this is I don't do this much. I have two guests today, so this is great. So we're going to get right into it. But why don't you guys each tell us a little bit about your background before we get started so our audience knows who you are? Zach, I'll let you go first.
Thanks, Sonal. I wasn't thinking about how special it was being in Chicago and being on podcast number 23, such a great
Right?
number in this city.
Wait.
Yeah, but that's really fantastic. And where you and I met, I know you're not here anymore, but I am Zach Pascoe. I live in the Chicago area. I have 20 plus years in convenience and energy, helping launch marketing programs, consumer offers, really thinking about four key people when I do my work. I think about older consumers. I think about newer consumers. I think about owners and managers, and I think about cashiers. And I know we're going to talk about all the processes that lead up to launching those offers today, but I really like to focus on those four because I know if the things that I'm working on are going to work for those people, then what I'm doing is successful.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I love that nod to 23 there, by the way. Loren, why don't you go next?
Yeah, absolutely. So 23, obviously I'm very close to Chapel Hill. Got to see that first series against the Lakers where 23 did amazing. So
Nice.
well, so 14 years with W Capra as an SVP, now consulting services and worked a lot with retail technology, both online, in-store, mobile, and the associated payments, and of course, security around it. And then along that timeline, lots of experience with loan-based applications in retail, ranging from using them for pricing to strategy, and then along the way, helping customers use more advanced uses of AI, including generative AI, which is being used quite frequently today. Again, what I'd like to do today is just go over the journey, right? There's definitely some things to consider when using AI for anything. And I think that the journey is the more important part, and your expectations up front are extremely important. So look forward to talking about that today as well, and complementing Zach's focus.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for being here. And as you guys were giving your intros, I just had this moment of that. I was like, oh boy, with the collection of the three of our years of experience, we've gone through several transformations.
Oh, yeah.
We're vintage. Well, why don't we dive in and let's talk at the high level of business transformation and how AI is sort of the central of that. And why is business transformation such a constant pressure for organizations? Lauren, I'll let you take that one.
I think business transformation in general, it's such a coined term, right? When you operate a business, right, the object is to earn more each year. The object is to be better than your competition each year. So the pressure performance never ending. So I think it's become a common term to basically challenge organizations to somehow find a way to get better every year. And I think that's what kind of ties well to our current topic today, AI, because it's just the latest tool. Shiny object is a way to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what's interesting is I feel that every transformation sort of has its challenges, but one of the things that I'm seeing with AI is that it's this race to embrace. And it doesn't matter, right? It's just, let's just dive right in. And, I love how everybody's being so experimental and innovative with it. But at the same time, there was an article that just recently came out that said, I think over 50% of AI projects are failing. And, they named all these reasons. But one of the things that I saw wasn't mentioned in this article was the fact that there isn't a strategy in place, right? Like, how do you actually get started? How do you get your customers aligned with their business goals and what their AI goals are? So, Zach, I'll ask you, how do you see AI enabling that transformation, whether depending on if they want to become more efficient or if they're just really trying to embrace the technology? How do you see AI playing a role there?
Yeah, well, I think what you said there is important and one of the things that we work with clients to do is really help them slow down a bit.
Right.
This is a race. There is a lot of pressure, as Loren talked about, to embrace new technology, but this is not the first time. It won't be the last time that we have people trying to embrace technology, whether it's creating a website or creating a loyalty program or whatever new offer you want to bring to market. You're always feeling like, oh, I need to be first. I need to go get it. And there's so much that goes into those statistics about who's
Right.
failing and why. And if you really start to dig in, it really is about the setup. Do you have the right organizational buy-in? Do you have that leadership vision of understanding the problem that you're trying to solve? Long before AI, the three of us have been working to really get to what is the issue at hand. And I think what's exciting about AI, at least in the area that we'll be focusing on here today, is there's so much more opportunity to be efficient, to unlock the ideas and the capabilities of your team members to do bigger and better things. But if you just race to do it and you don't talk to your employees, you don't talk to your consumers, you don't understand the processes, you're gonna fail. So
Yeah.
I know we're seeing a lot of that today. That's probably giving some people some pause. Personally, I think that's a good thing because it's going to allow us to really focus on what it is that we can use AI to unlock and get the best of what it can offer.
100%. I completely agree. And, I would love to hear a little bit more about some real world experiences that you guys have with your clients. And, what are you seeing in terms of where AI is kind of creating the most impact? And I'll just throw that question out and either one of you can take it.
Perfect. I think, and just to build off of Zach's point, the clients who have succeeded, right, are the ones that truly take that step and saying, what am I trying to solve here, right? And
Yeah.
because, basically AI, its boundaries are limitless, right? Anything that requires a human brain, right, which is most things that were done manually first by a person,
Right.
is eligible for an AI solution, right? But you have to think about how complex is the knowledge of the person who's doing the job, people doing the job, or organizations doing the job that AI is going to take on, right? Number one. And then how am I going to teach it? So those are two important things, defining what you're going to do, but also how am I going to teach AI to do the job? But then when you talk about generative AI, which is the latest buzzword, right? AI teaching itself. How do I teach it how to teach itself? Like, yeah, so it can execute. So important because the organizations that have succeeded, right, have been the ones to keep it simple to. So where I'm a retailer and I can truly define, for example, how I price. So pricing applications that use AI have been successful in many regards, mainly because they've been able to define what AI needs to know about the merchandise, about competition, about my location, and specifics that I can provide it so it can quantitatively determine and work through what could be the best price for something or the best strategy or approach. So those have been successful. And I think where we've seen, obviously, challenges, right, is where potentially human safety, right, where trying to get AI to drive that car for or operating controls,
Right.
you do have to take a step back and that per Zach's point. But again, I would say the answer to your question, so it's the simple application so far where I might focus on, tell me how I should price this merchandise in this market, knowing my competitors, knowing these things, and providing AI as much data it can use to make a decision. And of course, I need to teach it how to make that decision.
Yeah. And I think you make an important point too. Just you touched on, how do you teach? But it's not just tools you're using, but it's the people who are going to use it too, right? Like, I think we often forget about the strategy piece, but then we also forget about the change management piece of something like this. And there's people who are fearing losing their jobs because of this technology. And how do you upskill them so that they can actually leverage this technology to the best of their ability and not necessarily be afraid of it so that they actually will embrace it? So just a couple of added points there. Zach, do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I definitely want to talk more about the upskilling of employees. But, before we get to that, even as it relates to Loren's point about pricing and the technology that Loren's working to help clients better use the data that they have to drive their price, you do need to know what your brand value still stands for. And
Right.
my pricing strategy to extract more value because I bring a premium product to the market. Is it a higher quality, maybe a higher cost? Have I been able to drive that impression with my consumers to know how they're going to respond to those pricing tactics? So what Loren's talking about, the fine tuning, day part pricing, targeting different consumers, you still need the people behind it to know what is it I'm trying to achieve. And so that's, I think, what's going to be important and why it translates then to your point about employees. How do we get those employees, instead of just going in and typing the numbers and setting those prices, to be able to step back, look at that bigger picture, and make sure they're delivering the best consumer experience and the best outcome for their own company?
Yeah, I completely agree. What are you guys seeing at W Capra with your clients? Like, how are they approaching this?
I think the ones that obviously were working at either very beginning exploration, right? Or were being brought in because they don't want to fail. Then they're recognizing that, they're not heading in the right direction. Right? It's the stepping back, right? As Zach spoke about at the very beginning, and looking at what they're trying to accomplish, right? So for example, if we have a security customer, it will be, let's step back and realize we're not ready to give keys to our security environment, security to AI. But what can we do? Well, we generate thousands of logs every day, a ton of data that somebody's manually looking at today. Let's give it to AI, where AI can pick it apart in seconds and maybe find something in the log that a person can follow up on to make sure that the firewall, right. Still secure. There's another issue, weird emails coming in that AI picked out of the logs that would take us days to find, right? Some of the exception reporting. So, those types of baby steps are where we're getting pulled in and then helping. And then I would say the process, again, like we talked about at the beginning, is let's all appreciate for the moment that, what it took for our parents to raise us, right? I mean, we were told a spoon, a fork, right? We learned to eat, and then eventually, over time, we learned how to stop when we got to a crosswalk, check these ways, right? Before we cross the street. So, AI is a similar learning. You have to plan how we're going to create foundational learning. This is what you teach the child, right, on day one. And then eventually the child has enough foundational learnings to where it understands how to connect all these things it learned and make a complex decision. So that process, that journey with AI is where we're helping customers in the very beginning. And in some cases, to be honest, they're years, right, actually doing what they truly want to do. But the onset is they've at least established a more logical path. And then for quick wins, like in most organizations who have zero patience to wait 5 years to check here,
Right.
to get a product, what can I peel off in this journey and do now? So for right now, let's use it to look at law and very quickly identify potential security issues. 5 years from now, we want it to be able to run the fire, maintain it, manage it, update it on its own. But there's a journey to get there. So I would say, so now that's probably the biggest part of the journey.
Yeah, no, I think that's right on. I mean, I'm seeing some, really large successes in like marketing arena, like lead generation and just, managing all of the digital marketing pieces. And then when there's use cases like you mentioned, looking at logs and very quickly, generating some insights from that. But huge wins in the automations that are going to, take people off those mundane tasks. But then to kind of get a little bit further, there's a little bit more planning and strategy, I think, that's involved in that because in some cases, we're also finding that the technology isn't there yet, right? Like I mean, you could sit in a room and dream up of all these different ideas of all the great things we're going to do with AI, but then, the technology has to get there too. So, it's sort of build that roadmap and put those really pie in the sky ideas out there because even though we might be waiting for the technology to evolve in some areas, I don't think we're far from it too. So those are just my thoughts there.
Yeah, we're not far. One of the challenges in particular in the industries that Loren and I support is it's not just the technology around AI. It's some not necessarily outdated. It functions, but a term used of technology debt.
Yes.
It said convenience and energy. It's a kind of sometimes a fancy way of saying gas stations, right? You've got old fuel dispensers. You have wiring that was laid under the concrete 20, 30, 40 years ago, point of sale devices and pin pads that do their job today, safe, secure payments, but don't necessarily enable the more advanced functionality that we would like to see clients be able to take advantage of to use that data to more quickly respond to consumers. And so that roadmap concept that you mentioned is something we're very actively working with clients and thinking about for ourselves, because it's easy to say, well, I can't use AI. It doesn't affect my business.
Yeah.
I think that's a narrow view. It's something I know I've had to open my eyes up to in recent years to say that this is coming. It's not just about, somebody creating a movie or spoofing a voice, but there's real practical applications of that. And that's really what we encourage the people that we work with is just to better understand what it isn't and to make that plan so that they can actually take advantage of it. If not today, then tomorrow, because if you're not taking advantage of it soon, you're probably going to find yourself in a difficult spot.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And in fact, you touched on something that's a nice little segue into our next topic, which is risks and challenges. One of the things that I see is that you want to embrace the technology, but is your current infrastructure even able or at a spot to allow you to take advantage of this technology? Sometimes what I've noticed is that I'm working with a client that's really eager to embrace AI, but their current infrastructure isn't necessarily ready or their data isn't ready to allow them to embrace the technology. So just curious to hear what you guys are seeing out there.
There's really two big things there, right? So let's talk about the data availability, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where I store it, how I get it. So AI, like anything else, again, I keep drawing the people comparisons because this is what we're talking about. Artificial intelligence equates to using something that would normally be any person with a brain, right? So what do we have constant inputs every day for our sight, taste, smell, hearing that drives interactions, right? So AI needs the same thing in the form of data. The more data it has, the more current that data is, the more real time. The important term here, real time data, is the more successful it is in making decisions that are relatively correct for the here and now. What does that mean? When I need real-time data for most retail applications, it means I need a big place to store all this data.
Right.
Wherever I'm harvesting this data from, I need real integration, right? APIs that can bring this data in real time so I can access it quickly. My AI engine, right? Can access it quickly. So my infrastructure typically has to be very robust. And this is what challenges some of our customers up front is they're not ready for that investment in the infrastructure, right? Second is people, right? People still determine whether or not the data is correct, right? Whether that's a business user who can look at the data and say, this makes sense, or I'm going to use a term that, is taking our customers by surprise, data scientists. What do you mean data scientist, right? I need a data scientist. I'm a retailer.
Right.
Because data scientists, right, are the ones that can actually show the relationships between data. Sometimes they have specialties in economics, data correlation, advanced use of statistics. So it's extremely important because what you want to do is bring in the right data that basically is related, and it will be tied to the decision making that you want AI to do, and perhaps the automated execution that will come from an AI's decision. So those are two big areas there for me, is when it comes to the data, having the infrastructure you need, and then secondly, people you need that can really scrub this data and quality assurance.
Yeah. Zach, did you want to add anything about the people aspect of that? And the reason why I asked that is because I think that that's something that's misunderstood by leaders, right? Like, what's the lift? It's not always just plug and play, right? Like with generative AI, and if I'm just using ChatGPT, that's great. I can use it all day long, but it's not necessarily the right tool if I want to do some more complex integrations. So, from a people perspective, do you find that leaders are kind of misunderstanding, like if I want to do something a little bit more complex, I need more than just ChatGPT?
Yeah, I think they take for granted just because they have data, as Loren talked about, that's going to solve their problems.
Right.
But is the data being keyed in correctly? Do I have the right input so that the machine can actually do what it's meant to do? If I'm just loading everything into my back office software as general merchandise, AI is not going to be able to distinguish whether Loren's buying an energy drink versus a soft drink to then create that marketing offer that's going to appeal to him. So there's a lot more that goes into it than just saying, I'm going to buy some software because the salesperson said it's going to boost my sales by 25%. There's a lot of things that go into making that happen. It's why companies are investing in process mapping. They're using cameras or other ways to monitor employee actions, which then again gets back into that people element. How are people responding to that? So I think that is where some leaders can fall short. It's where the ones that are being successful are going to get there more quickly. It's that acknowledgement that it's not just plug and play. And that's what we're trying to help the people that we work with recognize.
Yeah. It's interesting that you bring up process mapping, because I love that moment when you get a couple of different people from the same department in a room to talk about a process, and each one of them has a different way that they do it. There's just these slight little nuances, right? And that doesn't necessarily come to light until you're starting to map it. And then everybody's like, oh, wait a minute, I don't do that. And then when you're trying to create the workflow with AI to do some of that, it's like, wait a minute. Now
the old swing cartoon, right? Tell somebody you want to swing and you end up with 40 different versions. The difference now it can be intimidating is that swing is sort of virtual.
Yes.
Behind the scenes. At least with the swing, you could see a couple steps in, something's not going right, and we can course correct and change out the seat for a tire, whichever you want. Now, if you're not careful, you could be millions of dollars in,
right,
for the swing to come out the other end, and you look at it and go, well, that's not what I wanted. And so the level of complexity, the level of risk in these investments is greater. It's why I use that term at the beginning about slowing down, because you really got to make sure you get this right and do what's right for your business. I think this is going to become a lot more accessible. I think we're already seeing that, the largest companies have been using these technologies for several years already. And you can see the results in how they operate and some of their profitability numbers. I work with a lot of smaller retailers, and I am now seeing there being a more accessible way for using these tools, using this information. But like Loren said, they have to invest in the people that are committed to making it right and doing it in a way that's still true to their brand, true to what they're trying to deliver to their consumers.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. When we talk about risk, one of the things that I often get questions about is it safe? But really what they're asking me, is it secure? Is my company data going to be just floating out in the internet somewhere? And, then we kind of lean into the security aspect of this. So, Loren, I know this is a favorite topic for you. So I'd love for you to weigh in on how important it is for us to bring security into the whole AI adoption conversation.
It's an important conversation early on because typically companies are now creating, some are, but typically companies are not creating their own version of AI. They're buying
Right.
from somebody, right? So they're going to use AI, but they're going to use the Chat GPT engine, for example, to do it.
Mhm.
Now, the importance of that is okay. So I'm using this cloud-based solution and I'm providing you with data, and the data is proprietary, or it may be protected. Maybe it has sensitive information regarding payment, so it's PCI protected, or it's PII protected because it's personally identifiable information, or HIPAA protected.
Right.
I need to know that because if I'm using an application for AI from another vendor and that data, right, that I'm providing is being stored elsewhere, I need to know how that data is secure.
Yeah.
That's right. It's data out. It's data that they should be securing. I need to be actively involved, right, in
Yes.
making sure it's secure. Because ultimately, again, you cannot fire AI for making a mistake.
Right.
Anything that's done, you are still accountable for, even though the mistake might have been made by AI or the security around it. So it's your brand. The risk is you're all on you, right? Your
Yeah.
organization. So you do need to know this. So upfront involvement from your security team or a trusted security advisor to look at that for you and make sure all the safeguards are in place and you're at least aware of how your data is being secured that will be used in AI. It's very important.
Yeah. And I think even as you're shopping around and looking for working with different vendors, it's important to ask them and really dig into the details about how they're securing the data that they're capturing on your behalf. Let's talk a little bit about how leaders can prepare for the future here. So, as you guys are moving forward with your clients, how are you advising the executives who are starting out with AI? Some of those executives always tend to come to me and ask, okay, I just want to get started. We just got to get started because we're in this race and we're falling behind. What do you guys advise your clients in terms of here's where you get started? We talked about, starting slow, small projects, but what's really the secret sauce here?
It's really looking at your stakeholders, right, within the organization, right? So you have usually executive leadership that wants something yesterday. You're telling
Right.
somebody,
Yeah.
you do business, I'm going to give you the money, but I need
Right.
what you're going to give me tomorrow. And then you have the people that I would call your ground zero level head players that know there's going to be some work involved, right? You're helping them to get through and identifying all that work. So really what's important is you have a lot of stakeholders in your organization, right? Depending upon, again, we talked about earlier, what you intend to do. Think of AI like anything else. You need to understand the significance of what you want to do. What are the risks associated with makes the wrong decision? How much do I need to teach it? And then how am I going to teach it to teach itself? It defines the journey and the work, and then the data infrastructure, all the infrastructure I need to build and secure to make sure that's in place, right, could translate to a multi-year time. So when I think of my stakeholders, right, I know who I'm working with at ground zero, they want to get to year 5. Let's say it's a 5-year project and they want 100% everything they were asking for. But along the way, I need to give executive leadership something. So in 6 months, what is the quick win that leadership can see in 1 year, a year and a half, 2 years? So your journey has to also include quick wins to keep your leadership engaged, which will keep your funding and support coming, right, as needed when you pass those stage gates and you succeed, and then showing real progress towards the long-term goal that your stakeholders that brought you on board, that they see you moving towards that ultimate goal where AI can ultimately own a function, successfully execute it, and then instill confidence that it's doing a good job at teaching itself and adapting and doing an even better job as it continues to perform the job.
Yeah. And Zach, as these stakeholders are eager to adopt and get their feet wet, what are you seeing, from them, or what are you hearing from your clients in terms of, where do I get started?
Yeah, I think I often like to take a more practical view of things, in kind of small chunks. So
Yeah.
if you're a manufacturer and you're making widgets, I don't necessarily want to tell you that you should introduce AI to your assembly line, because if that goes wrong, you have no product to sell.
Right.
Where can you sample with AI, especially for those that are just getting started? And I think that's who we're really trying to appeal to today. Can I introduce AI in my finance function? Can I introduce it in my HR function? One of the big areas that we've seen it for a long time, and I think there's a lot more to come, is really around support, help
Mhm.
desk. If a customer calls in and they have a problem, do they want to self-help? Can I get them through self-help to resolve their issue? Do they need to talk to an agent live? And then how can we enable those people to better serve those consumers? How do they know who's calling? They know that Sonal is a very loyal customer, that she's been with us a long time, and I need to make sure that I'm doing perfectly right by her. Or some second time, now that's the human element. Now a supervisor can call, say, hey, I noticed that you're having some trouble. What's going on? How do we make that better? So that's what I would encourage people to do, is just find that area where you can explore, where you can make that right-sized investment, understand
Mhm.
how it applies, and then scale from there.
Yeah. And one thing I will say that what we do at Minerva is we ask our clients, who's that technology, that innovation junkie? And it doesn't have to be somebody that's in tech, right? It could just be someone that's really always interested in getting their hands on the latest gadget, right? Get them involved. Let's find that champion. And at the same time, let them experiment. Give them an area where they can just try and fail fast and learn from that, but then take those findings and share them with the rest of the organization, right? And have intentional lunch and learns or whatever learning way you have within the organization. Let them be that champion for AI within the organization. And at the same time, I think it's important to do a little bit of a readiness assessment, similar to when we're doing a security assessment, right? We're going in to understand, what's the current state? Well, I think the same applies for AI. Do an assessment of your organization. How's your infrastructure? How's the data? Where are the people in terms of embracing technology? And how are your policies and procedures around this, right? And if you don't have some of those things ready, well, you've just now developed a roadmap and getting started. So there's a couple of things that we do. But speaking of governance, I wanted to get into, where does governance play a role in all of this? Because right now there is just, so much out there about compliance and governance, and how do you really get your arms around this? What are you guys seeing out there?
So governance, it's really because a lot of AI is still in project, right?
Yeah.
So governance is a way to steering things in the
Yes,
right
yeah, you're right.
that has that mix of leadership, right? Has a mix of people that I would say are from the business and IT. And then depending upon what the focus for AI is, you might have somebody from the risk part of the organization. It's internal audit, it's risk management, or their internal legal involved in the conversation because, they want to ask the question.
Mhm. Yeah.
What a fair enough.
Yes.
And finance, we see governance in large part right now in the form of steering committees that have different stakeholders that can fully represent everything the organization think about before they engage or along the journey to make sure that there are no surprises, bad surprises.
Yeah. Yeah. Zach, are you seeing anything in the governance arena or training with your clients? Are they embracing some of that, or are they kind of staying away from it?
Well, I think everyone's acknowledging that they need to understand how they're going to use AI. I think because it's still in the early phase, you end up with that room of stakeholders, and everyone's kind of looking around to who is really the expert here and how do we apply that to what we're trying to do. The marketing folks rightfully trying to push the envelope with how they use data, how they use information, grow sales, better reach consumers. Legal is traditionally taking a more conservative role. How do you take all of that and do what's best for your company, understand what that risk level is, and monitor it? Make sure that what you're doing is true to your brand, that you're not alienating your consumers, that you're not alienating your employees along the way. The monitoring, as we've talked about, is so key here because it's a little bit harder to see than
Yeah.
and so many of the processes and the things that we're used to dealing with that are right there on the surface. So it takes a little bit more effort, But again, it's that much more critical to put those processes in place.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, one of the things that I do is I always advise my clients at the minimum, if you don't have an AI policy in place, get one, or at least go and update your acceptable use policy to just mention how you can leverage and how you can use AI within the organization and what data you can put into your generative AI engine and what you can't. If you could at least just define that, then you're already so far ahead than others.
But
Well,
stay open too. I mean, make
yes.
sure that you know who in your organization, even within WCAPRA, where we have our own policies in place, as Loren and I and our peers are seeing things, we bring that to our leadership and we say, here's why we need to consider pushing the envelope a little bit here, and have that conversation, make sure leadership is bought in, and then
Mhm.
communicate that through the rest of the organization. You can't stay static. You can't stay static
Yes.
with anything. And this is such an important area to keep an eye on and understand how it's affecting, because there's a lot of people out there potentially making decisions at a legislative level that are
Yeah.
they're responding to sensational headlines. They're responding to statistics that may or may not actually tell the whole story. So we're challenging ourselves within our firm, and we're certainly doing that with our clients so that they can take advantage. I am optimistic, as I've said, about what this technology can bring. We have to use it the right way. And
Yeah.
when we do that, I think we'll all be better off for it.
Completely agree.
It's a really important point to know, and what Zach's saying, like to make follow up on that. It's every organization has to realize what has made it valuable and
Yeah.
what they do, right? So in our case, Zach mentioned our own internal policies on the use of AI protect our core competency. What I mean by that is our younger associates that are learning the consulting skills, learning, we see potential in them and we need to grow their capabilities. But their core competency is the expertise they will gain in the practice area they are focused on and the ability to harvest information, distill it, provide it to customers in the form of advice, right? And
Yeah.
support with implementation. Well, that's the process that we need to make sure that they're using their learning processes and not
Again.
AI
Yeah.
to develop those skills, right, in support of our organization's core competency. So part of that governance will be, depending on your organization, if you're a hospital, you still want your doctors to have the core competency to review symptoms and diagnose.
Yes.
So if you want to govern the use of AI so that you don't lessen the potency of your doctors, right, your medical staff and your medical team. So it's a very careful balance there that, making sure you preserve your core competency is a critical part of governance.
Yeah, that's such a key point. In fact, it's funny that you mentioned doctors because there was a segment, I think on NPR recently, about how doctors were using some AI technology to detect something. I don't even remember exactly what it was, but to detect it. And AI was beating them in terms of its ability to detect. And what they found is that when they weren't using the AI technology, doctors were kind of, for lack of a better word, getting a little lazy in their ability to detect. So, that core competency of, not leveraging a technology to do that was sort of dwindling. And so I completely agree with you guys that it's really important to keep that intact.
That's what's scary, I think, from both sides of that. You get
Yeah.
scared as a patient. Am I getting the absolute best outcome from that medical
Right.
visit? It's also scary for the doctors that they're threatened by being replaced, or by the patient that comes in and says, well,
Mhm.
doc, I already looked this up on the internet and I know this is the disease I have and I need you to treat it. The doctor, in a lot of cases, will still know better than what
Mhm.
that patient's seeing. We have the same challenge as consultants. Am I
Right.
be
Yeah.
replaced by my client just going onto the internet or onto a chat GPT and saying, how do I solve this problem? In some cases, they might be able to solve the problem. In others, they won't. Distinguishing between those two, though, I think is still where people can get themselves in trouble. And
Yeah.
then, yeah, the employee morale piece, to make sure that we're helping employees understand how they can be better. Help that doctor know that's a tool you can use. It's a reference. You still are using that in comparison to all the things you've learned to make a better decision. And maybe by doing it, using those tools, now you can spend more time consulting the patient, talk to that person longer, get to know them better, maybe understand a little bit more of what's going on. That'll help you add a couple new pieces of data that didn't go into what the AI output might have said was the problem. And so as a doctor, you can still give that patient better advice. We're doing the same thing with retailers. You still have to bring in all those different aspects of what the brand is trying to achieve. What are some of the other strategic objectives that are in play that need to layer on to just saying, here's the data, and based on the data, I need to do X. There's a lot of other considerations that still come in. And that's where we need to be making sure that we're helping employees get better at bringing those insights forward, because they can pick their head up from the data entry and really be evaluating the data so that you can do better things for your brand and for your customers.
Yeah. And
His point, sorry, I was just going to add to Zach's point. It's humans can detect and interpret outliers,
yes.
right? And data. Still better than AI, where AI might focus too early on something, diagnose and decide, where an outlier for a person might cause them to think, well, wait a minute, maybe I should be thinking about this differently. So this is where, again, that human interaction is one. The outliers of everything.
Yeah. And I think we're still at that stage where we're going to need the human in the loop, right? That we've all heard that concept. And I think that we haven't necessarily moved away from it. But one thing that I do think is a little bit of a challenge for people who do the type of work that we do is somebody can very easily just Google something and they think, oh, well, I can just leverage ChatGPT to do this. But I don't think we're doing a really good job on educating people about the limitations of generative AI when it comes to some of these more complex solutions that they're trying to put in place. And they're leveraging it, to give it instructions on how to do this, but then not necessarily understanding the limitations of the tool itself. And here are some better options. And I think that's the value that people like us bring is, we can help guide you through that journey of, here's where you would use something like ChatGPT, and then here's where you might want to actually use some of the APIs and all the other tools that are out there from a more complex coding perspective to do things faster. And even just like throughput and things like that people might not necessarily, the layman may not necessarily understand. I think that's the value that we bring when it comes to AI journeys for clients. Well, we are at the end. And before we wrap here, let me just make it quickly. We are not wrapping, but we are wrapping up. I always like to ask my guests, what are some insights that we can leave our listeners with? And, what are 2 to 3 things that they can do this week, like take action now to prepare for this AI transformation that's happening? Any easy, quick thoughts there?
I'd say keep open-minded, right? There is a lot of promise, right? Obviously, everybody seems to be first very concerned, right, about AI and how it's going to be used, and it's going to be the next Skynet, going to have Terminators walking around. So it's not all gloom and doom. There are, like Zach was describing, some very fun everyday life things. We're going to see it and we'll embrace it, right? I think the exciting, right, is we're going to see some advancements in areas that will help humankind. We're going to see some things that will help business do a better job making decisions, doing things in the marketplace that will benefit from a consumer standpoint as well. Biggest advice would be keep an open mind, keep learning, reading about it. So you truly want to, there's a lot out there today where you'll see things about successes and some failures, but no catastrophes. So keep open.
Love it. How about you, Zach?
Yeah, well, I think if they're listening or watching us today, they've already taken a step. So that's positive. And there's lots of other podcasts out there, AI Daily Briefs, one I've been listening to, just giving me little tidbits that I can use and think about as we move forward on this journey. And then it's people, talk to your employees, help them see where the benefits could be, engage them. How can you be doing your job better if I was able to free up 20, 30, 40% of your time, what would you do with that time? How can you be happier with your job through the use of this technology? Ultimately, that leads to a better consumer experience, better sales, better profitability, and that creates a really positive cycle that we can leverage. So that's what I would encourage leaders to think about, those small steps. Talk to people, talk to those that have already experimented. Where have they failed? Where have they succeeded? And just keep learning.
Yeah, both of you hit points that I think are just so critical for every executive, whether you're at the top of the organization or mid-level managers. It's important to continue learning, to continue being curious, to and really have those conversations internally and externally, and be okay with creating that culture around innovation and experimentation. Because, I think that's what we're all kind of looking for too when we're looking for new projects or different types of employers to engage with. But thank you guys so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. I'd love for you guys to each let our listeners know how they can get in touch with you, where they can find you, whether it's on LinkedIn, a website, whatever it may be. Here is your chance.
Yeah, well, I think it's the two things you mentioned, Sonal. WCAPRA is the name of our company, www.wcapra.com. Make sure everyone can see the spelling there. And we're also, of course, on LinkedIn. We'll be at a number of industry conferences coming up related to payments, security, PCI, convenience. We're excited to be with you today, Sonal, and appreciate you having us, and look forward to hearing from your listeners here soon.
Thank you. Loren.
Thank you. Yes, for what Zach said, you can definitely find us at our website, our contact information. Obviously, happy to talk to anybody about what they're thinking about AI. Again, it's all about the plan and going through that exercise. We definitely look forward to any reach outs, any questions that anybody may have. We're here to.
Awesome. And I just want to remind everybody that if you are ready to get your AI journey started, you can contact Minerva, and perhaps we can partner with WCAPRA, and you can reach us at letstalk@minervaconsultinginc.com, or you can go to our online home at minervaconsultinginc.com. And as usual, I'd like to ask our listeners to take 3 next steps. Number 1, subscribe to the podcast. Second, please leave a rating and a comment. Lastly, I've been getting some comments and I love them. Thank you so much. And thank you, Zach and Loren, for being here. I really enjoyed it.